As President Donald Trump's administration plans for a, quote, large-scale reduction in force across the federal government, we take a look at how layoffs are affecting federal workers across New Mexico. From the Albuquerque Journal, this is the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. I'll have more on that story in a few moments, plus a look at other headlines from the Journal's newsroom and Albuquerque's weather forecast on the other side of this break.
This episode is brought to you by the Kirtland Partnership Committee. For 30 years, we've been dedicated to supporting, growing, and preserving the Kirtland National Security Complex. We work tirelessly to enhance military readiness, foster community partnerships, improve quality of life, and promote economic development right here in New Mexico. Join us in our mission to ensure that Kirtland remains a cornerstone of national security and a key provider of quality jobs and investment for all of Greater Albuquerque. Together, we can make a powerful impact. Kirtland Partnership Committee, proudly shaping the future of our national security for 30 years.
Sweeping federal workforce reductions under President Donald Trump's administration are having widespread effects here in New Mexico, impacting national parks, Native American schools, healthcare, conservation efforts, and services for veterans. With an estimated 44,000 federal employees in the state, these layoffs are creating uncertainty for workers and communities that depend on federal support. Guided tours at Carlsbad Caverns National Park have been suspended indefinitely after 14 of its 25 interpreter rangers were laid off. The park may also close on certain days due to staffing shortages as well. Law enforcement presence is already thin, with only one officer on duty for months. Across the state, other national parks and monuments are also seeing cuts. Employees at Aztec Ruins National Monument and Chaco Culture National Historic Park have reported layoffs, including maintenance workers and preservation crew members who care for ancient dwellings. However, the park superintendents have denied these claims. In response to the backlash, the National Park Service has announced plans to rehire 50 maintenance workers nationwide and increase seasonal hiring from 5,000 to 7,700 positions. However, it's still unclear how this will affect New Mexico's parks. Many current employees remain hesitant to speak publicly, fearing retribution. Meanwhile, at the Southwestern Indian Polytechnic Institute in Albuquerque, 20% of staff were laid off, including all tutors. The loss is particularly concerning as graduation approaches in April, and many students still struggle with education disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Some instructors were fired in the middle of teaching their classes, leaving uncertainty about how coursework will be completed. Ray Gotchapin, a former administrator at the institute, was speaking during a press conference on Friday held by Representative Melanie Stansberry's office and shared the story of an instructor being let go in the middle of the school day, the students' response, and how the institute is dealing with the fallout.
And Friday, on the 14th, they were right in the middle of a class when their instructor was let go. Students are dumbfounded. What do we do? What's going on? What's happening? So students are torn up. So SIPI is currently struggling with that. We're trying to come up with how we're going to cover our classes because we lost 21 staff. 21 staff were let go. 17 actually let go. 14 decided to take the early option of retirement. So a total of 21 staff is what we lost. So we're feeling the impact.
At the Indian Health Services, layoffs were temporarily halted, but concerns persist. The Mescalero Apache Service Unit, which is already operating with just one full-time medical provider and a 50% vacancy rate, narrowly avoided losing an additional 7 employees.
Losing this many employees would have had devastating consequences to our healthcare system. While the firing of probationary employees at IHS was halted last week, there is concern that this is only a temporary reprieve and that these actions will deter applicants.
Also speaking at Friday's press conference via Zoom, Mescalero Apache Tribal Nation President Tora Padilla outlined the consequences these actions could have.
These programs and the employees who carry out these services seek to uphold the obligations of the United States and tribal nations.
Across the country, 950 IHS employees were initially terminated before the new Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. rescinded the cuts. As for the state's national forests, New Mexico's Carson National Forest lost about 25% of its staff, while Gila National Forest was hit even harder, with 40% of their employees let go. Many of those who were laid off were probational employees, meaning they were still in the first year of their jobs and had not gained permanent status. The United States Forest Service was among the hardest hit agencies, losing 3,400 employees nationwide in just 1 week. These staff cuts raise concerns about wildfire prevention and conservation work. One former Forest Service employee said many workers were already doing the jobs of 2 or 3 people, and further reductions could compromise efforts to protect endangered species and manage forest health. Additionally, Robert Prather, the state's only contaminant biologist, was laid off. He was responsible for responding to oil and hazardous material spills and monitoring wildlife refugees for environmental threats. His dismissal could leave critical gaps in New Mexico's environmental protection efforts. In a phone interview with the Journal, Prather explained how he learned the news of his termination.
I was following the news pretty closely, and I knew that there was a pretty strong possibility that this could happen. And the day of, I'd seen the news, and so I was not certain, but knew there was a good chance that something would have happened on that day, and it did. And I'm fortunate in that my direct supervisor and the field supervisor were beyond supportive and guided me through this. And there was tears in everyone's eyes, and nobody wanted to see me go. And it was kind of a whirlwind, from going to work as usual and losing access to my computer and being completely terminated by the middle of the afternoon. And so, that's kind of how it went down.
The New Mexico Veteran Affairs healthcare system avoided direct layoffs, but call center and administrative staff were cut nationwide. These employees help veterans navigate the complex paperwork required to access medical care, meaning their absence could lead to significant service backlogs. The VA announced 1,000 job cuts nationwide, claiming it could save $98 million annually, with plans to reinvest the funds into veteran care. However, former employees like Ariel Pines, a Clovis native who worked for the VA for 15 years, say the cuts are devastating.
Making the government more efficient. I am all for that. I am all for finding out what is wrong, doing some deep dives, but it has to be done correctly. And I would say that they made a mistake in not looking at people's times of service. I don't think it was not done correctly, and there was no thought behind it, and there was no real deep dives into seeing, okay, wait, before we just terminate these employees, let's see why they're on probation. Let's see what the reasoning is.
Pine says she's now seeking employment while applying for state unemployment benefits. The Trump administration's push for efficiency continues, with further job cuts likely on the horizon. Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has introduced a new policy requiring federal employees to justify their work weekly. Failure to respond is considered as a resignation. The Department of Defense has also ordered to cut its budget by 8%, resulting in 5,400 planned layoffs. This could affect military institutions in New Mexico, including Kirtland Air Force Base, where officials confirm they are complying with executive orders but have not specified local job losses. Many federal employees fear retaliation for speaking out, with some having signed non-disclosure agreements preventing them from discussing layoffs. Those who remain employed report increased workloads and anxiety about future job security. The Journal's coverage of federal layoffs in New Mexico is ongoing. If you or somebody you know have been affected by these layoffs and want to tell your story, contact the Journal's news team at journal@abqjournal.com. If you like hearing all of the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal here on the Leading News, consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal. You can check our show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription and keep up with all the latest news from New Mexico's leading news source. In other headlines from the newsroom, New Mexico's 60-day legislative session is unfolding in 2 distinct phases. The first phase wrapped up with lawmakers passing a major crime package and an overhaul of the state's behavioral health system. Both are expected to be signed into law by Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. Now, as lawmakers turn the page to the second half of the session, attention now shifts to child welfare reforms, climate policies, tax changes, and state spending, setting the stage for heated debates. Unlike previous years, the session has moved quickly, with Republicans criticizing the Democratic majority for prioritizing what they call, quote, bad bills. A controversial Paid Family and Medical Leave Act, which would establish a state-run fund for employees and businesses, is among the most debated measures. Democrats, however, view the session as a success, with Senate President Pro Tem Mimi Stewart noting that prioritizing crime and behavioral health bills early allow lawmakers to focus on other key issues in the second half. She also praised bipartisan cooperation, particularly with Republican Senator Jay Block. However, upcoming climate-related bills, including one that codifies greenhouse gas emission limits, are expected to spark fierce debates. Despite passing a sweeping crime package, lawmakers anticipate more discussion on youth crime laws. House Speaker Javier Martinez vowed a, quote, fair hearing on a measure expanding the serious youthful offender law following recent crimes involving minors. However, he also emphasized a focus on rehabilitation. Republicans, including House Minority Leader Gail Armstrong, wanted stricter penalties for juvenile offenders and were frustrated when their amendments failed. Despite their concerns, GOP lawmakers ultimately supported the crime package. Lawmakers have filed over 1,200 bills this session, 100 more than in 2022. Some are lighthearted, like declaring the Monday after Super Bowl a state holiday, while others address major government reforms. A proposal to make every legislative session 45 days instead of alternating between 30 and 60-day sessions is awaiting a House vote. However, extending session lengths is challenging without providing legislators with salaries, and a bill to pay lawmakers appears to be dead this session. And a major overhaul of the Children's, Youth, and Families Department is expected to take center stage during the second half of the session. Democrats and Republicans alike see reforming the troubled agency as a priority. Proposals include ensuring more oversight for babies exposed to drugs while keeping families together. Other issues likely to prompt debate include medical malpractice law revisions and behavioral health training for county jail officers. The legislature is also still missing a representative for House District 6, left vacant after Representative Eliseo Alcorn's resignation and subsequent passing in January. The nomination process hit a roadblock when Harry Garcia, the initial choice, was found not to meet residency requirements. Now Governor Lujan Grisham is reviewing two new nominees, former Senator Clemente Sanchez and ex-Cibola County Commissioner Martha Garcia, but is waiting for Attorney General Raul Torres to determine Sanchez's residency status before making a final decision. With March 22nd set as the adjournment deadline, legislative action is expected to accelerate. New lawmakers are expected to be tested as they navigate high-profile debates on crime, child welfare, and climate policy, shaping New Mexico's future for years to come. A tragic case that gripped Albuquerque for months came to a close on Friday as a jury convicted Nathan Richard Garley and Jose Angel Romero of first-degree murder and 8 other felonies for their role in a 2023 mistaken identity shooting that killed 11-year-old Froylan Villegas and left his cousin Tatiana Villegas paralyzed. The shooting happened on September 6, 2023 near Isotopes Park when Garley, believing he was targeting a rival, stood through the sunroof of a Dodge Durango and fired 16 shots into a white Dodge Ram. However, the truck held an innocent family. Froylan Villegas was sitting in the front passenger seat and was killed instantly, and Tatiana Villegas, who was driving at the time, was struck 5 times and is now paralyzed. The attack shocked the city and led to statewide gun control debates, with Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham briefly imposing a public gun carry ban in Bernalillo County. Despite her injuries, Tatiana Villegas remains determined, telling reporters that she plans to continue therapy in Guadalajara, Mexico, and is hopeful she will walk again someday. After just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury found both men guilty of first-degree murder, which carries a minimum sentence of 30 years before parole eligibility. Sentencing has not yet been scheduled. Albuquerque Mayor Tim Keller and Police Chief Harold Medina applauded the verdicts. Medina admitted he still doesn't feel justice has been served, given the devastating loss to the Villegas family. And Major General Stacy Huser, 20th Air Force Commander and higher headquarters for Kirtland Air Force Base, is in town to participate in Kirtland's largest readiness exercise. There will be an increase in military vehicles on the interstates and a presence in the community as the base hosts this annual training exercise to respond to accidents. Additionally, the incoming base commander, Colonel Justin Seacrest, currently commanding troops in Wyoming, will attend the exercise and shadow the current base commander as he prepares to take command this summer. Now taking a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast. Today you can expect sunny skies with a high near 72, and this evening mostly clear with a low around 35. To keep up with all the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal, you can visit our website at abqjournal.com. I'm Gino Gutierrez. The leading news will return tomorrow.